One of the things, let's see, you served as alderman from 59 to 61, and then your tenure as mayor was from 61 to 65.
Yeah, it really was. I was elected on the council in December of 59, and we were staggered terms. There were 5 aldermen and a mayor, and I think it was a mayor and 2 aldermen, and then the other 3 aldermen. The other 3 aldermen would be at the other year. So it was staggered, so none of us all went off together. But Mr. Harmon, of course, was mayor, and he could see some of the things that were coming up that maybe he didn't want to break up his retirement too much for. So he said, well, I'll run 1 term and then I'll get out. And so that meant that his term was over with in 61. And I thought, well, I've got a desire to help, and whatever I could do, we'd do it. And so then that's why I ran for mayor in 1961 and was elected and served 2 terms. Would like to have served more, but I got really smart then. Dr. Wheeler was retiring from the school board, and I was talked into running for his position on the school board in 1966. And served 2 terms on the school board, and that was a big mistake. I would have been much happier to stay as mayor of the city. It's been a lot less complicated than the school board.
One of the things that you did while you were mayor was to put together a comprehensive plan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there was a young man from Bernard Johnson's engineering company who came and called on me as mayor and said, I'm selling comprehensive plans. I said, fine, what's a comprehensive plan? He said, well, first of all, it's paid for by the government. Oh, that's fine, it won't cost us anything. But we will come in with our various engineering groups, and we will develop a plan for thoroughfares, water and sewer lines, various public utilities, and this is a guideline for the development of the properties which are undeveloped. And there was a whole lot of land that was undeveloped at that time. And he said, of course, there's one other thing in this, that if you adopt this comprehensive plan, you also have to adopt zoning. And I had been in a lot of cities that did not have zoning, and of course, our neighbor down the road here at Houston still doesn't have zoning, and it's the only city of 200,000 or more in the United States that does not have zoning. And we felt that zoning would be a necessary protection, again, like building codes are. That if you bought a home, you'd expect something of comparable quality to be built adjacent. You wouldn't want a gas station, or you wouldn't want a 7-Eleven store or a honky-tonk or whatever to be built next to you. So zoning was an important part. And because there was so much vacant land, we felt it certainly imperative to talk to the Kempners and say, look, you got about 10,000 acres of land left, and we're talking zoning. Now, would that impede the sale of your property? And I can remember Mr. Kempner saying, Bill, that would be the best thing that could happen to our property, is to have it zoned so that we would be sure it would be continued on as a fine place to live and a place where people would want to come to live because of the nature of the surrounding homes and the nature of the property. So we agreed to this comprehensive plan, and Jimmy, I think a comprehensive plan stayed in existence for quite a while, didn't it?
Still is today.
And so we were very fortunate in those days that most of the land was unencumbered, and there were some 9,500 acres after the sale of the 1,300 acres to Sugar Creek, and this 9,500 acres had been used for cattle and cotton and alfalfa, and it was prime real estate. And Houston was growing, and people were wanting to move out. The Southwest Freeway was getting built, and Sugar Creek was starting to develop. And the way Sugar Creek developed was that the developers came and talked to Mr. Kempner, Mr. Harris Kempner, who was the son of I.H. Kempner, and he said, Mr. Kempner, he said, we have done a development down at Nassau Bay, and would like for you to come down and see it. And he did, and it was a very impressive development. It was right across the street from NASA. And they had put in some canals and some boat ramps and things, and it would lead out into the water to get on out into the Gulf. And they built some beautiful brick homes and had a planned community there. And this fellow said, you know, he said, if we can buy some land from you, we can promise you that we will build $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 homes out here, and we're also going to put in a 27-hole golf course that'll be designed by Robert Trent Jones, who was one of the best golf architects in the United States. And I can also promise you, Mr. Kempner, that whatever we pay for this land, you will receive more from the sale of the remaining land. You'll receive a whole lot more because of what we will do in order to improve our land to make your land more valuable. And that sounded like a good idea. So there was 1,300 acres that was sold to Sugar Creek people, and they did exactly what they said they would do. They built beautiful homes. They built a 27-hole golf course. They built a clubhouse. The only problem was part of it was in Stafford and part of it was in Sugar Land, but that was something you couldn't do anything about. But that's how it got started. And then the remaining 9,500 acres that the Kempner still owned was starting to look very attractive. And there was a developer who came in and talked to the Kempners and said, I would like to buy your land, and here's the price that I would pay for it. And the board of directors thought that that was a pretty good deal. So they sent a letter out to the shareholders and said, we're going to sell the corporation for this amount of money. And there was a shareholder who took a look at that price and said, that land's worth a lot more than that. So he took the board of directors to court in Delaware, where Sugar Land Industries was chartered. And the judge said, I think on that type of sale, you really ought to take some bids. And so they went back and made it public that they were going to take bids. And that's how Gerald Hines got involved in it, because he was the high bidder. And Hines, of course, had no experience in development. He'd been building buildings in Houston and a lot of other places around the country. But he took on this 9,500 acres as a master plan community. And those of you who live in the First Colony area, I think will agree that he did an excellent job, along with the city of Sugar Land, because by that time the city of Sugar Land was getting greatly involved in the development of the land, because they wanted to make sure that the streets were put in properly and that the water and sewer systems were put in properly. And there was no way that the city could afford to put in a water and sewer system. So in this area of First Colony, there were individual municipal utility districts that were formed, with the idea that when the taxable value became pretty well equal to what the city could afford, then it would be annexed, and the water and sewer districts would be dissolved. And that's how the development of First Colony came about. And in that land, it was not only residential land for sale, but there was industrial land for sale on the north side of 90A in what is now the industrial park. And Hines was a little bit more familiar with the industrial part. So he saw to it that he got some good industries out there, some quality developers, and the industrial park is almost filled up now, that there's really not that much land available. And now Telfair is coming in with their acreage, and that's where Texas Instruments is going to build their building and get out of the Stafford area, and Fluor is going to sell the complex that they have and get into a new building at around University. And Costco is building a big box store out there, and the city of Sugar Land is going to do some things out there with structures of auditoriums and parks. And so all of that land is going to be developed. And that was not part of Sugar Land Industries, but that was part of the Texas prison system. And they decided it was time to sell tube, and they could use the money to build prisons out in Timbuktu, which the land was a lot cheaper and the prisoners weren't so close to urbanization. So those are some of the things that happened with the land and how it developed, and it made for Sugar Land to have a very, very attractive place in which to live. And I see a lot of new faces here, and I'm sure that one of the motivations to move to Sugar Land was the fact that it was a good place to raise a family and a good place to live, to have values for your residences and your businesses, and that's kind of why you're here, because you like the way it works.